goodness. America will never be the same again. The Christmas story is an absolutely beautiful story. We all think of this beautiful baby in a manger, in a stable, because there was no room in the inn. And we all think of just how romantic the whole thing is. And then, of course, Dad got a message and said, hey, we'd better escape down to Egypt, otherwise they might be going to knock off our little son. So he escapes. Then after a while they come back. And most of us know the story, the Christmas story. But a lot of us don't realise that we, in Unity, teaching new thought, are beginning a new culture. A new culture. We are changing our world. Does our world need changing? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but who knows what happened in Dallas recently and things like this. And I'm going to remind us of what I talked about last Sunday. And we had this wonderful baritone, Bob, you're beautiful, singing from the Phantom of the Opera, The Feelings of the Night. And I'm going to say to you that unless we learn to accept our feelings of the night, we struggle with Christmas. We struggle with Christmas. Why do we struggle with Christmas? Well, Christmas is the story of your birth. It's the story of my birth. Christmas is the story of how we enter into that secret place of the Most High. If you saw my bedroom, you'd know it's a bit like a stable. You know, we enter into that secret place. And in that secret place, we give birth to our true potential. Our true potential. This is what we call Christ in you, your hope of glory. Most of us know the story. It happened by the seaside at a place called Caesarea in Philippi. And this was a few years after, about 35 years after the Christmas story. And Caesar of Philippi is like talking about the ego, if you like, or the personality, starting to say, look, I feel pretty good about myself. And here was this fellow called Jesus saying to his disciples, look, some of us reckon that I'm a reincarnation of Elijah or one of the prophets, but who do you say I am? Now, let's think about today's daily word. Does anybody remember what the word was? Faith. Faith is represented by Peter. Peter was a bit of an upstart. He was always ready to say something, like somebody else I know. He was always ready to jump in and make a comment. And this fellow, this was 2,000 years ago, this fellow said, look, some say that I'm Elias or one of the prophets, but who do you say I am? And this is what we say to our own faith faculty. Our own faith. On Thursday night we said there's a big difference between belief and faith. You can believe anything. You can believe pigs fly, that's okay, you can believe anything you like. But I'm going to say to you that you can only really have faith in who and what you really are. You can only really have faith in God. You are God in expression. So Peter, this young upstart, said to Jesus, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, flesh and blood hasn't revealed that to you. In other words, it's not what you can see that we're talking about, but the Father within. Remember in the meditation we talked about the Father within? The depth of your being? At the very depths of your being, you know the truth about you. You know the truth about you. And just recently we've had an example of somebody on television who knew the truth about him. Does anybody know who Adam Liddell is? Adam Liddell? Who's Adam Liddell? with Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's syndrome is a pretty bad twitch, quite extreme. Have any of you watched The Voice? If you haven't, watch it tonight. He's made it into the finals. That boy, when he sings, totally overcomes his Tourette's syndrome. When he sings, he's beautiful. He runs around touching people, talking to people. He's with them. He is expressing his Christ self. And he forgets. He forgets that he's got Tourette's syndrome. But if you notice it, soon afterwards, when he's being interviewed, back it comes again. Straight away, because he's no longer singing. And what I'm saying is, all of us have within us this overcoming ability for anything at all. It does not matter what you think your melody is, or malady, not melody. It doesn't matter what you think your melody is, or the melody of somebody you love. They have the Christ within them. And I think when we're celebrating Christmas, we need to look at this. Because the celebration of Christmas, whilst we celebrate Christmas in July and Christmas in December, I'm going to say the celebration of Christmas needs to take place every time you think about yourself or somebody else. Every time you think about yourself or somebody else. And I'm saying it doesn't matter who I'm talking about. Because every man, woman and child on the face of this earth has the Christ within them. It's not possible for them not to have. So I'm not talking about some magic trick that you need to take into your mind. I'm talking about a simple statement of fact. Everybody in the face of this earth has the charisma within them. I'm not saying that they're all expressing it, but remember Jesus said flesh and blood hasn't revealed that to me. So you're not talking about the person you can see, whether it's on television or wherever it is. You're talking about something you know about the person. And the new culture that we're establishing is to draw it out. The Christmas celebration. A lot of us forget that when I write Christmas, I put a hyphen in the middle of the Christ Mass. If your history was Catholic, you'll know what a Mass is. It's a celebration. Mass is a celebration. So what we're doing is celebrating the Christ. Today we're celebrating the Christ. It's a powerful thought, but it's a metaphysical thought. I'm not taking anything away from the story about the baby Jesus or the Virgin Mary or Joseph. I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm saying all of this is symbolic. One of the things that I learned when I was in the seminary, Uni Village, one of the things that I learned was the Bible is not a book of religion. Can I repeat that? The Bible is not a book of religion. It's a book of psychology. It's a book of how to think correctly and how to live correctly and how to gain more out of the potential we have within us. There's not one single person sitting in this room today, and thank you, Lala, for this beautiful room in which we're sitting today, which we're celebrating as the anniversary. There's not one single person that hasn't got the potential within them to fulfill their dreams, whatever their dreams might be. Doesn't matter what they are. You have the potential to fulfill your dreams. That's the Christmas story. And it is a dream. And you might say, what about healing? Well, when we talk about healing, and we talked about this on Thursday night, but when we talk about healing, we often think of the disease, the illness, the malady that we're trying to overcome. So when we talk about healing, we need to think of wholeness beyond healing, beyond the thought of fixing up a problem, to the point where we're saying, I know that the Christ within me can overcome any challenge I may face. Any challenge I may face. We have that within us. But something I just want to mention right now, and this is something that was spoken of by that fellow that I was talking about before, because 2,000 years ago he said to everybody there, your enemy is they of your own household. Look it up in the book of Matthew. Your enemy is they of your own household. And what we think of when we think of our household, we think of mum and dad and the kids and the uncles and aunts and nephews and nieces. And you know what your household is? That's the household, and your enemies are what goes on inside of yourself. Your enemies are your own thoughts of lack, your own thoughts of limitation, something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, your own thoughts of debt. I'm going to say in your affirmations, do not try to overcome thoughts of debt. Deny them power. Deny them power and affirm what it is you're seeking in life. For instance, I was talking to Wayne last week. Most of you know who Wayne was, your treasurer. I was talking to Wayne last week, and I just asked him about the beautiful building that we're in and the 20-year celebration today and what the mortgage is and all that sort of thing. And he said, you know, the debt's somewhere around about $380,000. And I immediately thought, right, here's a challenge. I was not here when Lila got the idea and when you decided to build this beautiful edifice. I wasn't here when that happened. But now I think there's a challenge involved. Instead of even thinking of overcoming the debt, what about thinking within the next 10 years? I think that's a fair thought. Within the next 10 years, let's have a goal of $500,000. I'm not talking about overcoming debt. A very good friend of mine has a church in America. He was a classmate of mine, Jim Rosemeggy, and they had a mortgage of $480,000. $480,000, a mortgage on their church. And they wanted to build another, bigger church. And initially they said they needed around about $800,000. It turned out to be $1.2 million. But they decided that they weren't going to try to overcome their debt. What they were going to do was simply say, right, let's tap into the Christmas story. Let's tap into that Christ within us and overcome that thought completely because it has no power over us and see what it is that we want to experience. $1.2 million. And they did it with ease. In fact, they oversubscribed. Was that meaning that the people in the church had to dig deeper in their pockets? No. It meant that they had to come up with ideas. And those ideas prospered the centre, and Jim was rapt. And he wrote that article, and, you know, I've given Jim a copy of it. But it's an interesting thing that when we think of debt, we have trouble getting rid of the thought of debt. When we think of prosperity, there's no word of debt in the word prosperity. It's to prosper. It's to expand our consciousness. And that, to me, is a far greater thought that we need to look at. So, if the enemy of your household is your own thought of debt, if the enemy of your household is a thought of illness that you're trying to overcome, if your thought of your household in a relationship is to overcome separation, let's go beyond that. A talk that I went to recently, Marie and I went to this talk, and it was called Beyond Belief, and I mentioned this last week. Beyond belief is faith. Faith is beyond belief. Belief separates us. We all believe something different. But faith is a connecting link. Jesus said, have faith in God. So if you are expressing your God self, you can have faith in that, because it will guide you to prosper in every area of your life. We need to look at this. Eric Butterworth said, and I'll just read this to you from The Universe is Calling, look around you. Where is the justification for the misery and inequality in the world? How can you justify the millions of starving people, the brutal wars, the victims of terrorist attacks and senseless crimes, the hungry and homeless all around the world? This is his quote, we are dealing with consciousness. And hard as it sometimes is to accept, there are no experiences unrelated to consciousness. That sounds pretty heavy. And what is this thing called consciousness? It is the sum total of everything we think and feel. Our soul, if you will. And that is what we're programming every minute of every day. And possibly there's more negativity than positivity, as we see it in the previous examples that Eric spoke about. So what we're really saying is consciousness. Do we have the ability within us to change the way we see the world? Do we have the ability? Do we have, and of course in miracles it says, I am determined to see things differently. I'm going to put the words in here. I am determined to see myself differently. Now you might say, but I think I'm Jesus Christ anyway. Well, okay, but are you prepared to see yourself differently? Are you prepared to expand on your consciousness of yourself? I'm going to say it once more because I've got three things in mind here. The first one, I'm determined to see myself differently. Can we say that together? I am determined to see myself differently. Now let's think of our world. Now when I say our world, I'm talking about your friends and relations, your immediate world. And you might say, well, look, I've got somebody over there that's sick, and I've got somebody over here that's going to the divorce court, and I've got blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say, hang on a minute, let's go back to what we said. I am determined to see my world differently. I'll say it once more, and then we can say it together. I am determined to see my world differently. Together. I am determined to see my world differently. Now you all remember last week I talked about this. How many people do you contact in a day? Well, I'm on Meetup and I'm on Facebook, and this little thing down at Frankston called Unity Bayside contacts about 500 people a day. That's not a big number. And how does it happen? I press one button and the button says send. Any of you that know anything about computers will know what I'm talking about. I press the button called send and I contact 500 people. How many people would we in this room today contact today? Just think about it for a second, because then how many people would they contact today? And do you know, before the sun sets today, if there's any sun up there, before the sun sets today, we're talking about millions and millions of people. Can we change the world? Can we change the world? I am determined to see the world differently. Now that's a bit different to my world, because my world is people that I know, contact and all that sort of thing, but what about the world out there? I am determined to see the world differently. Can we say that together? I am determined to see the world differently. What a challenge. And that involves the Christmas story. Because remember what we said before? Everyone that you think about, for whatever the thought might be, has the Christ within them. That's the Christmas story. And we celebrate it. It's the Mass, the Christ Mass. I think that what Eric wrote was really a fantastic thing for today. And I think that thing with Adam tonight, you know, he may or may not win. But boy, hasn't he come a long way. Did anybody here know who Joshua Z is? Joshua Z. Spelled Z-G-E-E, Chinese boy. He's 9 years of age. At 2 years of age, his father, who lived in China, he was a businessman in China, at 2 years of age, his father was walking along the street and they passed a piano store. And the father took Joshua into the piano store, 2 years of age, remember, and sat him on a stool just to keep him quiet. Sat him on a stool near a piano. And do you know what he turned out to be? Bill Livingston. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. No, but
I was 5.
I was distracted there. 2 years of age, he started tinkering with the piano. At 3 years of age, he went to a music teacher and they found that he had what they call perfect pitch. In other words, he knew the sound was perfect when he played it. At 9 years of age, he now has 4 international world titles, 2 in Russia and 2 in China. He's right now, this weekend, playing in Sydney. At 9 years of age, I heard him yesterday in his first presentation. Wow, we've got a Mozart in our midst. At 9 years of age, that boy is competing in Sydney this weekend for another international title. You know, what is the potential within us? Does anybody know who Izzy Dymanotsky is? Izzy Dymanotsky. That's a name to remember, isn't it? I've got it written here. Izzy Dymanotsky is 14 years old. At 8 years of age, she started playing with her mum's cosmetics. Does anybody know who I'm talking about yet? Last week, at 14 years of age, she signed a contract with Pricerite for $1 million for her cosmetic range, which is aimed at the tweenies. She's 14. She's created a cosmetic range that Priceline, you'll be able to see it. It's called You Are Skin. You Are Skin. At 14, she has a $1 million contract. This is in Melbourne. We're not talking about something way off in the ether somewhere. Why am I saying this? Well, a couple more things. In 2011, a group of people in America had a dream. In 2011, they decided that Saturn, the planet, the biggest one in our solar system, wasn't that far away. We're going to send a satellite off to Saturn. They called it Juno. Oh no, Jupiter, sorry, not Saturn. Jupiter, the planet Jupiter. Juno's the name of it. It's taken 5 years to get there. It only travelled at 265,000 kilometres an hour. That's almost as fast as I go in the Kia. It, last week, was either going to crash into Jupiter because it has such a strong field. It's 300 times the size of Earth. It was either going to crash into the planet or bounce off the atmosphere and be never seen again. It entered into the cycle and is now part of the Jupiter atmosphere, the Juno satellite. Did anybody see how they celebrated when it got there? I thought that was fantastic. Somebody had the dream way back in 2011, they sent it off there. I mean, when you think about 265,000 miles an hour, that sounds pretty fast, kilometres an hour, that sounds pretty fast to me. But they did it. And they've achieved it. The sort of problems we have, and I'm talking now about the feelings of the night. The sort of problems we have, this is probably a little bit personal when I'm saying this, but I heard it on the news last week. Does anybody know what a trap shooter is? A trap shooter? A world famous trap shooter is not allowed to go to the Olympics in Rio. Our world famous trap shooter, he was picked up for drink driving and he had a gun unsecured in his car. He didn't do anything with it, but it was unsecured in his car. And when he was interviewed, he was picked up for drink driving. And when he was interviewed, he said, "But I'm 40 years of age. Surely a man at 40 years of age has a right to have a drink on his birthday." I don't deny that. I think that's great. But he doesn't drive the car. Does that make sense? The sort of things that I think go through people's minds that stop them from travelling at 265,000 miles an hour. You have the mind, the very same mind of Adam Liddell, who is on The Voice tonight. You have the very same mind of Izzy Dymanotsky, the very same. Why do I say that? Because there's only one mind. Many of us think that I have a separate mind and nobody can get into my mind, but there's only one. I use it, you use it, but there's only one. And that mind is the mind of God, and we all use it. Some of us use it 5% of the time. Some of us 10% of the time. Very few of us use it 90% of the time, but it's available to us all of the time. So what I'm saying now is in our Christmas celebration, let's think about that. Let's think about, in our mind, travelling at 265,000 kilometres an hour. That's almost as fast as Bill will be travelling in the aeroplane to get to America next week. It's flying fast, but we have that ability. So my message is today to celebrate our Christmas, but realise that it's an internal job. The whole of the Christmas story. Remember what I said about the word Bible? The word Bible is from the Greek word bibliography. The bibliography is a collection of books. I'm concluding with this because it's important to remember this. The bibliography is a collection of books. If you have your name in the front of your Bible, and if you don't, put it there. It's a collection of books about you, and there are no names, and there are no places named in the Bible. Every name and place name in your Bible is a part of your consciousness that you go through daily in the unfolding process of celebrating the Christ. You are the Christmas celebration.